state budget has been cut by 10%. Are additional cuts needed, and where would they be?
Well, as I said earlier, state revenues are down 12% over the last 2 years. And if Indiana is going to live within its means, not raise taxes, we certainly have to reduce spending accordingly. And as such, the governor in the last fiscal year urged agencies, well, actually it wasn't an urge, told agencies that they were going to cut their expenditures by 10%. And across the board, agencies cut about 9.7% of their expenditures. This year, in fiscal year 2011, it started just a few months ago, in July of this year, the governor said, okay, we've got to cut more because we have to continue to live within our means. And as a result, agencies across the board are cutting their budgets by 15% this year. Now, state agency spending is only a small portion of the state's general fund budget. I wish I had my charts and graphs, but you're lucky probably that I don't have all of them here tonight. But there are a lot of other areas. K through 12 education represents 50% of the state's budget. So if we're going to balance the budget with revenues that are down, we have to look at all areas of expenditures. In our area, in our budget, we cut 12% last year. Back to 2003 levels. We'll be back to 1999 levels this year. Reducing expenditures, cutting our budgets, doing more with less for the taxpayers. And I certainly think that's what you've asked us to do and what we're correspondingly doing.
Just to add to that for a second, are we going to have to cut spending? The other side of that is we don't know what the revenues are going to be in state government. We keep lowering the projections because of this tough economic condition we are in. But one thing you can be certain about under the Daniels administration, we're going to make sure that we are not spending more money than we're taking in. And I'm going to echo what Tim said a moment ago regarding the individual cuts that we've made from our offices. Over the last 4 years, on average, we've handed back 10.4% of the appropriation that the legislator assigned us. Last year, in fact, of all the state officials, our office returned the highest percentage back, which was 13.4%. It's something I want you to know because this reflects not only my thinking, but Tim as well. Both of us voluntarily refused to take the pay raise that we had already been granted, and we've done that now 2 years in a row. We don't believe it's right. When Hoosier taxpayers are suffering as they are, trying to get through, making everything work, we don't believe that there should be any way that we are inflating the cost of government. We're taking the hit too. And one last thing I want to say about that, and Tim indicated slightly here, but I just want to add one little nuance to it. The employment levels. We all hear government grows, it never reduces in size, and that always costs you more. The number of employees working in the state of Indiana right now is actually lower than were working for the state in 1978. We have kept government, we have saved dollars.
The simple answer to the question is yes, of course we'll have to cut more out of the state budget. I think that's an important question to ask our legislative candidates up next because ultimately it's a legislative prerogative as to where those cuts are made within the budget. The auditor has very little statutory authority to make cuts in any budget except his own operating budget, which represents a very small portion of the budget. What I think the auditor can do to have a more holistic impact on that process is look for ways that the auditor's office can help identify savings in other places. Like the business process changes we thought could save $10 million in the first 6 months. Like working through accounts payable and contract audit procedures to make sure we're actually getting what we pay for. Like looking at ways we can collaborate with other financial agencies, like maybe even eliminating the office of the auditor, eliminating the office of the treasurer, and combining that into one centralized state comptroller's position like many states have moved to already. How can we think innovatively to reform the way government operates and get more strategic savings and not just nickel and dime the very relatively small amount that the auditor actually has statutory control over.
All right. And Judge.
Just want to echo, as Sam said, there's only so much that the state treasurer and the state auditor's office can do. But I think every office needs to be as responsible and responsive as possible in order to improve the bottom line for our government. We are facing a lot of cuts, and so what we need to do is make sure that money is invested in such a way that it's kept as safe as possible and still getting a good return. Because if you have the best return possible, then of course you can either have the same services at lower taxes or lower taxes for the same services. I do believe that there are some moves that the Treasurer's Office could make that would stimulate the economy as a whole. And an example of that is that I've noticed that the lion's share of state deposits seem to be flowing to banks that are headquartered outside of the state of Indiana. I know that not all of them could be brought in wholesale in one day, but I think a lot of them could be brought back to Indiana. And when you do that, there's a better chance of that money recirculating and enabling small businesses to grow. Now, these dollars have to go through a few steps before they solve the problem that was raised by the questioner, but ultimately, as small businesses grow and put more people to work, we have an expanded tax base and a better chance of growing the revenue so that we can indeed live within our means without cutting essential services.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. All right, our next question for the statewide candidates. I know this one has come up a lot in meetings of various groups of people. Do you think that property taxes could be eliminated in the state of Indiana? Who wants to try that one?
I'll go first.
Tim Aaron, auditor.
Certainly, we can do a lot of things if we want to, and if the will is there. But what we have to do is recognize that there are functions of government that are being supported by those dollars. And so, when it is necessary to bring forward an item or an agenda to discuss elimination of property taxes, we need to look at what are those dollars that are being collected by the 92 counties across the state. What are those dollars supporting? And then how best do you replace the necessary expenditures that are within those components? And how best can you do that, not only in a short-term basis, but a long-term basis? Certainly we can eliminate property taxes. But I think you can't do it without having a discussion about how you replace those dollars first and bring to the table the necessary dollars and the necessary plans that would be important to deliver that and implement that across the state. We certainly have reduced property taxes in the state of Indiana. And the Daniels administration is looking to make permanent the 1%, 2%, and 3% property tax cuts or caps into the Constitution. A way to provide some permanency as to you as a taxpayer to know that your taxes won't achieve above a higher level. Can you go to the next step? You certainly can, but it's going to take a necessary dialogue to see where do you need to fund these down, where is the funding necessary, and then how do you come up with that, whether it's through a sales tax on services, an income tax, or any other means. And that's where the dialogue has to take place to ensure that we all know what is the result. Because you can't just say, let's eliminate property tax, and then not know the result, and then say the result's even worse than what we had before. So we have to have the plan in action beforehand. And then, let's go take it. And I think now's the time to have the dialogue.
Anyone else on eliminating property taxes?
I think that was a very honest answer, which characterizes the fact that it has to come from somewhere. I have a whole new perspective on property taxes because I became a homeowner recently here in South Bend. I bought an old fixer-upper that was falling apart, and I've made a lot of investments that may go as far as to double the value of that home, and probably will double my property tax bill too. But the thing about property taxes is that they are local, and I don't know if this is supposed to be a conservative idea or liberal idea or what, but in general, I think local control is something that we should really think twice before giving up. So if we were to replace those property taxes with, say, yet another increase in the sales tax, which is managed and assessed at the state level. I think what we're doing is we're cutting down the flexibility of local governments in order to resolve their problems and fund their operations, and instead having state government dictate how that's going to work. Even though I'm running for a state office, I think on balance, most times I would prefer that decisions be handled at the local level rather than the state level when possible. And so I think that's something we need to think very closely about before we move to replace property taxes with another mechanism for revenue.
Okay, thank you.
I largely agree with the comments that Tim and Pete have both mentioned already. I want to talk about the issue facing us on the ballot November 2nd. That's the idea of property tax caps. I'm one of the few people in my party on record as supporting the constitutional amendment to cap property taxes. I think that's a positive step in reforming the tax structure in Indiana and placing more decisions in the hands of voters. When a community feels the need that it needs to expand services or evaluate the offerings that it has, those items would go to a referendum where local voters would get to decide if that makes sense for that local economy. I think that's a great step in the right direction for tax reform in Indiana. I'm happy to support that on November 2nd.
All right. Anyone else want to support that? Okay. Almost seems like we addressed that. In what ways could state government be more transparent? We have additional comments that weren't already made. That one actually ended up getting addressed quite a bit. Anyone else want to add?